get my colleagues to take their seats. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for coming to our new facility. And for those of you who did not have the opportunity to come on, what day it was? Monday? Friday, for the grand opening, which was awesome. And I got to see most of the whole building. And it is a beautiful facility. So I want to thank my colleagues for all the hard work to make this happen, and on the leadership of Mr. Mann, I think, and Mr. Pierce. And I also want to thank Mr. Chip Jackson for his leadership in making us have this great reception and a grand opening. So with that said, I am going to, first of all, thank you for being here, and I am going to call Richland County regular session meeting to order. With that, the meeting is now called to order. Mr. Malinowski will give the invocation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we all live in our own communities, and we feel comfortable in the communities that we live in. And we may be in these communities based on social class, some type of political party, color, nationality, job, or something else that puts us in these communities. Yet when disaster occurs, like the recent hurricanes, the earthquake, the most recent shooting, the forest fires that are taking place, we look beyond our own group and our own community and are willing to lend a hand to those that are in need. We're kind of amazed by all that's offered by so many strangers to and for other strangers. So at this time, I would just like to ask that we remember all of the victims of these many disasters that have taken place recently, their families, their friends and acquaintances, the losses that each one of them has incurred in some particular way, and that they can be comforted in their distress. And maybe even starting tomorrow, we can our own personal community involve everyone every day. And if we did, just imagine, we might be able to start to find ourselves living in a community that we have absolutely no barriers and no prejudices at all. If you would join me in the pledge, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Malinowski.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
And I want my colleagues to know that a press release is being released to express our sympathies for those families who recently had their losses in Las Vegas. So we are doing that. So thank you so very much. Next item will be the approval of the minutes. Mr. Seth Rose, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I have a motion, and I move to reconsider that portion of the minutes on pages 24 and 25 under item B of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee to give first reading by title only to an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds.
Second.
Probably moved in second. Okay, we're on 24 and 25. Mr. Rose, would you repeat? You said
You just need to
give it first
reconsider
read.
it, and when it's reconsidered, then you make the motion to approve it.
Well, I guess
It's the motion to reconsider.
I'd move to reconsider the minutes.
Okay.
It would be the special call meeting of September 12th,
Yes.
those
Page
minutes.
here, please.
Top of page 25.
Yeah,
Page
24 and
Property
25.
acquisition?
No,
No,
Oh, hold that. You all got.
Mr. Smith, should I do, should I do?
it would
all-
be, it
do I
would
need to
be
do-
item B, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale.
Okay.
You see that on top of page 24?
Page 24. Wait a minute, I
Of-
don't have any of this stuff here.
Okay. Mr. Smith,
24.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
We have 1, 2, 3 meetings.
Yes, and it's
So
the
the first
September,
one, now, we need approval for the September 6th meeting.
yes, you can approve those minutes whenever you get to the minutes for September
Right.
12th, I think is when Mr. Rose is motion would be appropriate
That's what I'm trying to
for
get to.
reconsideration. Yes,
I need a
ma'am.
motion to approve September 6th minutes.
Madam Chair, I move to approve item 4A, which are the minutes for the special call meeting September 6, 2017.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Probably moved in second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we are back, we are at 4B. Mr. Rose?
Yes, Madam Chair. I hereby move to reconsider that portion of the minutes on pages 24 and 25 under item B of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee to give first reading by title only to an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds.
And it was properly second?
Second.
Properly moved in second. All in favor signify by...
Madam Chair, point
Yes,
of
sir.
order.
Yes, sir.
The motion should be correct, Mr. Smith, to reconsider it first.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
reconsider it, get it back
Yeah, that's-
on.
that's-
Then,
what
once
I'm-
it's reconsidered, if it's reconsidered, then the second part would
Would
be,
be
Yeah,
to
we
he would
take
make
some
the
action
motion
as
at
it
the
relates to
appropriate
that.
time.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to get to. So if, I can get a
That was
motion,
a motion.
Yeah,
just
I
to
move to
reconsider.
reconsider.
All in favor of reconsidering the motion for reconsideration of September 12th minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One. Okay, now we'll come back to,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir, Mr. Manning, you recognize.
I move that we defer that item until the first council meeting scheduled in November.
Do I hear a second? Properly moved in second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries. Okay, next we'll have approval of the minutes for 4C. Properly moved. I need a second. Properly moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item will be the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Properly moved in second. Mr. Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Inadvertently, while an item appeared on the Rules and Appointments Committee regarding the appointment of two persons for the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee, it did not get placed on the council agenda, so I would like to have that added if everyone would agree under the item 16, which is the report of the Rules and Appointments Committee.
Can I get a second on that?
I'll second. Mr. Mallon, why you said it did not get there?
I just was inadvertently left off. I'm going to say it's...
But the
it's-
intent was for it to be there.
The intent was to be there because it was, we handled it at the rules meeting.
Yeah,
All right,
okay,
thank you.
Okay, properly moved in, I heard a second. Any further discussion on this item?
Yes, ma'am. Is
Yes,
it?
sir, Mr. Manning, you
Would we
recognize?
consider that time sensitive?
You can,
I'd say no. Not time sensitive.
You sure?
if you don't think it's time.
You
sensitive-
sure?
Well, some of those members on the committee think it's
Well,
time sensitive.
yeah, we have several vacancies already on that committee. Every time they meet, it seems recently, they do not have a quorum. And we've got a couple people interested in being appointed, which may give them the quorum they need to carry on the meeting.
Thank you. I'm ready to vote, Madam Chair.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? The motion was to approve.
To add
Add it to the
a,
agenda.
you're right.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we have one more added that was outside, need to be added outside, because from fee and lieu for to adopt the agenda for third reading pleadings for 13F, and I believe the clerk mentioned. Miss Michelle, can you explain this to me, please, again?
Yes, ma'am. The public hearing for item 13F needs to be added to the agenda.
Okay, it was inadvertently left off?
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all heard them? Can I get a motion?
Second.
Do I hear properly moved in second in the discussion on this item? Here, yes, question, Miss,
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Now, do we have now that completes the amendment of the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda as amended.
Do I hear second? Second. Properly moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion carries. Next item will be the report of the attorney for executive session items. Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, we have item 6A, excuse me, which is potential litigation. Item 6B, contractual matters, that's sale of 2 properties. And also, Madam Chair, item 17A and B would qualify for executive session if the council has any questions about those 2 matters. Those are the acquisition of some property related to the transportation program, and Mr. Willoughby is here to address any questions that the council may have related to those items, and that's under the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, if you have any questions regarding those. And that would complete my report at this time, Madam Chair.
Do we have any outside attorneys on any of these items?
We do, Madam Chair. We have Mr. Willoughby, who is here on items A and B, 17A and B, if the council has any questions as it relates to those items.
So if the council does not have any questions, we do not need to go into executive session.
I would think not, Madam Chair.
Does the council, would the council like to entertain any questions on these 2 items?
I do, but it's not executive session, so.
Okay, all right. So hearing none, I just think, Mr. Smith, the council has not decided to take those items in executive session.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. So that completes your report?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, next item I have will be citizen input, and let me emphasize, these are for items on the agenda that's not requiring a public hearing. Now, I have a sheet here where a lot of people have signed up, but we've had the public hearing on this particular item, so that public hearing is now closed.
See if anybody signed up for other than Lake Dogwood, they didn't all put down.
Okay, do you see anybody else?
Now, I'd like to ask that anybody that signed up here, sign up for something other than the Lake Dogwood Tax District.
You're not gonna cover Lake Dogwood at all?
We've already.
Public
taken-
hearings already been held on that.
Okay, what about Kennedy Road? What
No,
about?
it's just Kennedy.
What about Dan Kennedy? Who is Dan Kennedy? And you for what? Well, we've already had the public hearing on that item.
I don't understand, ma'am. The last time the hearing was at school, I was there and somebody.
No,
was
sir,
there.
we had it at the library. We've already closed that out. We had it at the library.
But the last one was at the school, and that was the one before this one, and I was instructed that this was the place. So I
No,
was misled by the state.
The state.
okay, sir, I'm gonna, what I will say, sir, we do have a citizen input at the end of the meeting if you prefer to, speak at that time, but for this particular item, at this particular time, we have closed that public hearing, so, but you can feel free to stay and, do the citizen input on the item 18. I believe that would be the proper rules, is that
And the
right?
state will hear what I have to say about this. There will be a
Mr. Smith,
discussion between the state members and DHAC.
no,
An
sir.
understanding will be achieved. Due diligence will be done.
Ms. Myers, you are recognized. Excuse me 1 minute, sir.
Madam Chair, I don't know how many people signed up,
We've
but
got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got quite a few.
would it be possible to allow them 1 minute instead of 2? That the council would be willing to?
I don't know, that would be 2 public hearings, Miss.
Okay.
So I don't think that would be fair to those others who've done it, so.
And the misleading from the state, ma'am, I was at the thing, and the man from the representative of the state said that I would be able to come here and voice my opinion today. Matter of fact, it wasn't here, it was the other location.
Well, okay, sir, wait, that's the state, this is the county, so I am going to rule you right at this particular time. I'm not being funny, but according to our rules, right now, we have already held the public hearing on that particular item. So now, that item is closed, and so I have to move on to the next item. I
I need
apologize.
to wait until the end to voice my opinion.
Well, actually, not on this particular item. We've held the public hearing on this item, sir.
So
So,
signing up and
you will not be able to speak on this item because it's on the agenda. Thank you very much for coming. I do apologize.
sit here and wait till the end.
Okay.
Just so he
I-
knows he can't speak at the end.
There will be no, you can speak, but not on this item.
Not on this item.
Not on this
So I
item.
was misled.
Well, I do apologize. I apologize for those people who misled you. You got to understand, if the state and you were in another meeting, that was not under the privy of the county. So per our rules, we hold a public hearing. We have 3 readings in a public hearing. We've had the public hearing, so that public hearing is closed. Okay? All right, thank you so very much for coming. And I'll let you get with your representative, and you all can have some discussion. Next item on the agenda will be the report of the county administrator. Mr. Sears.
Madam Chair, members of council, I have several items to report on, and I'll try to be brief. The first one, I will be sending council a follow-up correspondence by the end of this week on the status of renovations for the council chambers. The chambers are very near complete. What remains is the seating needs to be installed. The AV system is being installed. But what I would like to do is to organize a tour for county council, but not until we actually have some dates and I have a definite assurance that everything will be complete. So I will provide that to you by the end of this week.
Thank you.
You also have, as my second item, the fire services contract. As you know, that is a intergovernmental agreement involving the City of Columbia. During the recent meeting involving county council and city council, the commitment was to correspond with and to take up where we had left off the negotiations with the city. We will do that and we're in the process of scheduling that now. And the intent are to take the agreement that council has reviewed, that draft, and we will provide that to the City of Columbia. You also have, also listed for me is the Transportation Program Utility Relocation. I have completed my review and analysis of the issues that have been pending and that have caused quite a bit of angst about the relocation of utility lines. And 2 things I think are important for this meeting. One, I've found that many of the public relocation of utility was provided for in the original referendum, and therefore some of the actions stipulating that there's a need for additional funding from some of the municipalities, I believe is incorrect. And what I would like to do is to meet with council at some point and provide council with the details of those findings, and also provide you with the list of all the projects that in fact have included about 15% that were set aside in the program for utility relocations. Given our recent meeting, as you know, on Friday, and given this particular issue, I don't think they're unnecessarily complex, but I do think that there is a need for council to be fully aware of all the issues. My strong suggestion is that council consider taking this item and having perhaps a workshop meeting, during which time there can be a full informing of council of my findings, and also council can vet and deliberate and ask questions. I would suggest that I don't have a date for a workshop, but I would suggest that council consider meeting in workshop to actually discuss that. And finally, as you know, there have been, as you referred to earlier, there have been a lot of disasters and other things that have taken place. As we have responded as a county to Hurricane Irma, we have also done an after-action report. We will provide that in detail. I would like to take, if I could, about 4 or 5 minutes to give you just a quick briefing at this point so that you understand just what has taken place. The staff performed, I believe, quite well, and I think the cooperative efforts with the city and other local governments was one that was done well. And Mr. Byrd is here, and if he could be allowed to just give you a briefing, that will take about 4 or 5 minutes.
Make it 3, and I let him do it.
Mr. Byrd, make it 3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Byrd.
members of council.
3.5.
It seems like every year we face with a disaster, and I don't know if it gets easier to handle the situations, but we certainly work hard to do that. Prior to Irma bothering us this year, a lot of things have taken place, and a lot of things took place as the storm approached. A couple of key things that occurred within a year of the storm: our hazard mitigation plan was approved by council, approved by South Carolina EMD, and approved by FEMA, which is very important in the recovery process. We had pre-established our RC Winds weather data reporting system, our animal shelter, our medical bus if we ever needed it. Our emergency operations plan was recertified by the state of South Carolina in July. We pre-identified Red Cross shelters as well as community evacuation shelters throughout the county, points of distribution, all those things that would be needed during the disaster response we had pre-established. The administrator's executive cabinet team became very engaged in the preparations and the response activities, which we've never seen that before. I have never seen that before, and that was very much appreciated. Public Works proactively went out and looked at drainage areas and cleared away debris that could obstruct the flow of water during flooding. The county purchased generators of water and other equipment pre-event in case they were needed. We had communication channels opened for elected officials and municipalities, and that was coordinated by the administrator's office. Our county assessor went out and did pre-damage assessment reporting, and that process was well underway before the event started. Our procurement department was ready to increase purchase limits. We had a lot of things going on in a very short period of time. Also, there was what was ongoing. We had daily meetings with the sheriff's department, Deputy Chief Cowan, myself, the Columbia Police Chief, Columbia Fire Chief, and others to talk about and prepare for response and any potential effects or problems that we could deal with. One key action that was undertaken at the federal level was the Department of Homeland Security issued an emergency declaration for protective measures or Category B expenses, which would enable us to get reimbursed at 75% of whatever we spent. Of course, we had the disaster declaration by the governor, which helped as well. Our Madam Chair signed a declaration for Richland County, which enabled us to begin rapid assessment and move into the response mode. So in short, we had a lot of things going on. We had a lot of coordination that took place. We identified numerous areas that were our strengths, some that were our weaknesses, and we will begin to address those as we move forward to try to make it even better. And unfortunately, we have another storm that's formed in the Gulf that could threaten us this coming weekend, so it doesn't seem to stop. So I'll answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of council, I think the one thing to be emphasized is the cooperative effort. All individuals, all departments, all public entities work very hard and work very cooperatively. There are a lot of things that we have learned from the past and some things we've learned this time around that we are looking at. One of the areas that we will have to do a lot more work on is making sure that our, I call them calamity areas, those areas where people need to temporarily stay during points of disaster, we're going to work very hard to strengthen that network, and I think you'll see some very good things that will come of that as we move forward to make sure we've got some strong areas throughout the county. I think it also should be noted that with the clear ugly disaster that's taken place in Puerto Rico, that the Sheriff's Department as well as our EMS Department are looked to and called upon to be of help, and also Richland County, the state of South Carolina, is actually looked to as potential sites for as victims. They're actually flown here and helped out. So that I think also speaks well to the efforts that our folks did. And so I really thought and believe it's important to just give them some acknowledgement, because it really was a job well done. There were a lot of things that could have occurred and did not occur because of the work that they did. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I also want to say that I had 2 requests regarding this matter, related to this matter, and it was to both school boards, School Board 1 and School Board 2. They said that they thought they were kind of left out of the loop. You know, you got to include everyone. They thought they were left out of the loop, and since we were using some of the schools, et cetera, that they be a part of your process when you are putting all these forces together and making sure that they are inclusive. That was the only thing that I heard, so I thought that was really good.
We'll do a better
Mr.
job of that.
Livingston?
But I just want to say, I really appreciated the complete reports and updates. That was very helpful, because I thought they were pretty thorough, and I was able to keep up because I got good reports and good updates.
Thank you so much, Mr. Byrd. Good job, well done. That concludes your report, Mr.
It does.
Next, I have the report of the Clerk of Council.
Yes, ma'am. My first item is just a reminder of the Institute of Government and County Council Coalition that's upcoming October the 18th and 19th. If you haven't already registered, please get with the clerk's office and we can take care of that for you. My second item is in an effort to begin our preparations for the upcoming council retreat, the clerk's office is asking for you to take action tonight on selecting a location so we can go ahead and get the reservations made. We have 6 submittals for locations, and I just ask that y'all take action on that, please.
So you just need us to choose one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do we have to do that tonight?
If possible.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm open for a suggestion.
Mr. Chair.
I have Mr. Seth Rose.
Madam Chair, I'd move that we have the annual county retreat in county council chambers.
Second.
Probably moved in second. In the chambers of the county council?
Yes, the newly renovated chambers.
Do I have a substitute motion on that?
Ma'am,
Mr. Manning, you recognize?
I'd make
Probably moved in second. I'm having a substitute motion, Mr. Rose.
I'd make
Mr.
substitute motion that we return to the Mandarin Center at Clemson University.
I'll second that.
Have a motion to return to the man in Clemson University. You want to do a third substitute motion? Yes, ma'am. Okay, Mr. Jackson, you recognize. Mr. N. Jackson.
I think that we go to Mr. Sweet's at Charleston Airport.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Probably moved in second. Any further motions, substitute motions? I'm entertaining all of them. I want to give everybody.
Madam Chair, I don't have a motion, but I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Pierce, you recognize.
Okay, which one of these is the least expensive? I mean, obviously, council chambers would be the least expensive, but of the hotels, which is the least expensive?
The first one, the Embassy Suites in Myrtle Beach.
Is it significantly less than the Charleston Airport?
Yes, it is. You want to change, amend yours to do that? Okay. Do you want to amend the second to do that? Whoever second Mr. Jackson's motion? Paul, you second Mr. Jackson's motion, right?
Yes, and what are you asking me to do?
Because I'm asking you to consider, Ms. Kimberly said that number 1 was the least expensive.
And so Mr. Jackson is changing his motion to that one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, properly moved and second. Are there any further amended motions to this item? Okay, I'm gonna start with Mr. Rose. All in favor?
No, you start with the substitute motion first.
Wait a minute, okay, that's right. I need to start with, Mr. Jackson's motion. Norman Jackson to have it at the Embassy Suite. That's number one, Ms. Kim. Embassy Suite, Myrtle Beach, Oceanfront. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye, or let you raise your hand. All in favor, raise your hand.
Pierce, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, Manning, McBride.
Any opposed?
Opposed, Rose Malinowski.
Rosa Malinowski. So now do I have to entertain the others? So it will be at the Embassy Suite, Myrtle Beach, Oceanfront. Ms. Kim, you can start the work. Thank you very, yes, sir. Mr. Chip Jackson.
Just let the record reflect that I second the motion to go to Clemson and deny.
Please let the records reflect that Mr. C. Jackson want to go to Clemson. I wonder why. Okay, all right, well, thank you so much. All right, Miss, you still have the floor?
Yes, ma'am. My last item is, the clerk's office has received an invite for the Columbia Urban League's 50th Anniversary Equal Opportunity Day dinner. It's Tuesday, November the 7th at 6 p.m. at the Convention Center. If you'd like to attend, please get with the clerk's office and we can purchase you a ticket.
Miss, is that November the 2nd? Is that our council meeting day?
Yes, ma'am.
November 7th.
Uh-oh. That's what I thought. I thought it was a conflict with the council that night, so,
Yes, ma'am.
so you, so you get Mr. Pierce,
Madam Chair,
you recognize,
You know, we support the Urban League 100%, and this is their annual event. I wonder if, who's not communicating with who? Because this has happened before, and by having it on a night, we just not, well, we go, we get there late. I would move that we notify the Urban League and request them in the future to please try to schedule it on a night that we can attend. I would ask them, somebody, I thought we had two.
we have,
And we discussed our seating arrangements, correct, Mr. Jackson?
that's exactly right. And not only that, Mr. Pierce, to reemphasize what you're saying, the city also meets on that night. So we got two councils that are meeting on that night, and they just continue to have that event on the night when both councils have their council meetings. So, only thing we can say is just to tell them that we have a council meeting. All right, so with that said,
Would you be inclined, Madam Chair, to write a letter?
I will, you know I'll do it. Yes, sir, the letter will be in the mail tomorrow. All right, thank you. Does that conclude your report, Ms. Michelle?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Next item will be the report of the chair. I don't really have a report. The chair, as described to me in executive session, I followed up with that item, and I believe that report was given to all my council members, so I followed the instructions of the council members and asked if there was any questions or comments. I heard none, so that completes my report. Okay?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
we have a point of personal privilege.
Yes, sir.
Several of us attended this morning. I think Mr. Jackson, you got there later, right? At the fire ops. Yeah, that's what I thought. The fire department sponsored a program for us where they had city council members. They were several. The mayor was there, and Mr. Manning, Mr. Jackson, and myself. I don't think that was everybody that came. I would just like to thank the fire department publicly for that presentation. They put on several demonstrations for us of various firefighting techniques. For those who were capable, they actually were able to suit up and operate some of the equipment. And I'd like to just recognize the fire department, thank them for that opportunity. And if they do it again, I would certainly encourage everyone to try to make an effort to get out there. It's developing further insights into how the fire department does its business, I think are extremely important for us. And the chief happens to be here tonight, so anyway, that's my,
Yeah, you have the point of personal privilege, and I also want to give Mr. N. Jackson also a point of personal privilege under my
Chair,
report.
I just want to echo what Councilman Pierce said and to leadership. I think you did the easy part. When I got there, it was almost 100 foot in the air.
Yeah.
And I'd use the time to cut a car open when into a house on fire. And suit up, I think Councilman Manning was there also putting out fires, so it was an experience. And just give us an example of what these guys go through while risking their lives. I mean, we were safe in what we were doing, but from what we saw, it's really important to understand that first responders, they have a job.
Mr.
So,
Manning,
thank you for your leadership.
Mr. Manning, you also will have, I'll give you like privilege.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was very educational and to have the hands-on experience. They ran us through kind of 4 stations, one with rescue, one with the CPR, kind of things that they do, one with the hook and ladder truck, and then the actual going into a burning building. And to have that firsthand experience was certainly helpful for me as a council member as I look to make decisions for our Richland County Fire Department. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. So I'll let you all come on my report. So thank you very much, okay? No further comments. I will have item 11 will be open and closed public hearings. And the first one will be authorize the execution and delivery of fee in lieu of the ad valorem tax and incentive agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, Trans US Incorporated to provide a payment for fee in lieu of taxes authorizing certain infrastructure credits and other related matters. Mr. Malinowski, did anyone sign up to speak on those items?
No one signed up to speak, Madam Chair.
That item is now, that public hearing is now closed. Next item will be 13B. Do I have it written right here?
That's it.
Okay, 13B this is the one that we said was not on the agenda, but I'm going to attempt to, is authorizing the execution and delivery of fee in lieu of ad valorem tax agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Tyson Prepared Foods Incorporated to provide for payment of fee in lieu of taxes, the extension and the existing fee in lieu of tax agreement between Richland County and Tyson Preparation Food Incorporated and other related matters. Mr. Malinowski.
No one signed up to speak, Madam Chair.
No one signed up to speak. That item is now, that public hearing is now closed.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am?
where were you reading, please?
This was an item that the clerk, we added on the agenda that was added.
Okay,
Okay. And you look, if you
So
look on,
11.
if you look at 13B, you'll see
Right.
the writing of
Well-
the verbiage.
no, 13B is not
I
that.
mean,
That's
13,
exactly why-
13,
that's it.
13F. That, so she just gave us that, so.
So there would be 2 13Bs, that's why I'm asking, what's the right number for it?
13F.
11B. Okay.
13F.
Thank you.
I'm
It's
sorry,
11B.
13F. It's B for
Right.
for this item, 13F for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? All right. The next one will be item 12, an approval of consent items. First, we have an ordinance agreeing to quit claim deed to David Hodge for portions of land located in Richland County known as a portion of the Olympic Alleyway and abutting TMS 08815-4-02. This is a first reading item. You'll find that on page 30 through 40. This is a consent item.
Just do them all.
Do you want to just do them all?
Yeah, Madam,
Okay. I have a motion to approve all of the consent items. That would be 12A, B, C, D, and E. All in favor? Mr. Malinowski?
Madam Chair, I'd like to remove item C, 12C.
12C. Okay, Mr. Pierce, would you like to approve all the remaining other than 12C? You want to
That's
move?
not here.
No.
That's not a concern.
It's a consent?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all in,
on the remaining
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving 12A, B, D, and E, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Malinowski, you recognize for 12C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is only a first reading item, so there is time. But while the committee unanimously recommended this to get it on the consent agenda, more specifics were requested also for that item regarding what the original bonds were for, as well as a breakdown of what the current funds would be used for, rather than just a lump sum given by each group. So until I see that particular specific breakdown, I'll vote no to keep it off the next consent. Thank you.
Okay, so, so you just gonna, so you just
Yeah.
voting no on this, okay?
Yeah, I'm
All in favor of,
I move approval of the item, Madam Chair.
okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Probably moved in second. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, McBride.
All opposed, like to rise.
Opposed, Malinowski.
Okay, motion carries for first reading. Next item will be third reading items. Would you all want to take all of those?
No, we gotta do them one at a
Well,
time.
we can do them one at a time, all right. All right, well, the first item under the third reading items will be an ordinance authorizing the levy of average, Valerian property taxes, which together with a prior year carryover of other state levies and additional amount appropriated by Richland County Council prior to July 1, 2017, will provide sufficient revenue for the operation of Richland County government during this period of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Do I need a motion? Do I need to hear a second?
Second.
Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, we gotta do third reading. This is the third reading. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank y'all so much. We have a new building. This
In
just,
favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, Manning, McBride.
okay, any opposed likewise? Okay, next item.
Madam Chair, could you reconsider that?
I need a motion to reconsider. Okay, I have a motion to reconsider and a discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item will be an ordinance amending fiscal year 2017 through 18 general fund annual budget to appropriate $307,383 to increase funding to the Board of Voter Registration and Election Department. That information you will find on page 76 through 78. I need a motion. Probably moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, Manning, McBride.
Opposed likewise.
Opposed, Malinowski.
Motion carries. Do we need to reconsider this item?
Did you reconsider it?
Do we need to reconsider this item, Mrs.? Okay, hearing none, the next item will be 13C, to establish and create special tax district in Richland County, South Carolina, to be known as Lake Dogwood Special Tax District, to define the nature and levy of service to be rendered therein, to authorizing imposition and ad valorem taxes and user service charges therein, which shall be imposed solely within the tax district, special tax district, to establish commission for the tax district and to provide terms thereof and all other matters related thereof. I need a motion. Mr. N. Jackson, you recognized.
I move that a flat fee of $737 be administered this year, the first year, and then a property assessment fee for the following years.
Heard Mr. Jackson's motion. Do I hear a second?
Point of clarification.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pierce, you recognize.
Motion, Mr. Jackson, to approve the establishment of the referendum with that addition?
Yeah, well, it's two-part to it. Unless you want to do two parts separate, I can do that.
Can you clarify your motion,
Okay.
Mr. Jackson?
It's two-part to it, right? One part is to approve the special tax district, and another part is to administer the fee to pay for the dam. Am I correct, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, can you give us clarification on that?
I'll try. I think that where you all left off on this issue, as I recall, was the attorney, Mr. Flynn, and I think the auditor was supposed to get together and discuss this matter, and there was supposed to be a consensus reached about whether or not there would be a flat fee imposed, or whether or not this would be done based on the ad valorem taxes of each parcel, I think, that was in the district. And that's where we left off the discussion, I believe, in the library. And that was the information that we needed for third reading to determine which one was going to be imposed, because I think you can do either or,
Okay.
as I recall. But again, I don't know whether Mr. Flynn is here or not.
He's
Okay.
here.
Mr. Brawley is too.
Is that
Yes, sir. Yes, so the
Okay,
consideration tonight, if I recognized by council, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, you recognize.
So in consideration, one of the follow-ups that we had from the last meeting was to come back and discuss with the auditor's office the methodology for levying the first year's assessment. The determination was to take the amount of money that was needed in order to pursue engineering and design drawings going forward, and to apply that on a uniform basis, as Mr. Brawley had requested. The number requesting about $80,000 applied uniformly across all parcels is $737. By the terms of the ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, the authorization that council is granting to the board of the special tax district is to levy fees in an amount not to exceed $2,500, or ad valorem tax millage in an amount not to exceed 250 mils. Should council determine to adjust that, you are certainly able to do so. Y'all are, the thresholds were created by the terms of the referendum, and those numbers can be adjusted by county council. It is y'all's ultimate ordinance. If the ultimate request is that the board of the special tax district, upon the approval of this ordinance, receive the authorization from council to levy the amount that Mr. Jackson just spoke about, with the follow-up discussion to come back to council next year to determine whether or not the assessment-based fee tied to property values would be something that would be available. That could also be discussed with the commission, brought back in front of council at that time, or also discussed with Mr. Brawley's office in the intervening period. The main push here tonight is that tax bills go out early next week, and so we need to kind of have a decision one way or another, or we're going to miss an entire year of the tax cycle, which puts us another year behind.
Mr. Malinowski, you recognize you had a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was in favor of having some type of a percentage or assessment fee based on values of the property. Seems the most fair way to do it.
Yes, sir.
And doing it this way the first year seems that in the government's rush to get the first year in, that we actually are penalizing certain individuals that would be paying less and rewarding some that would be paying more under a different system. And so I don't understand why we can't just tax them as they normally would be taxed this year, and then when the auditor's office gets a system in place that will allow for this other method, that could be sent out at some future point. It wouldn't have to wait till the tax year. It's a special assessment. So it could begin at that point, couldn't it?
It certainly could. Cost is obviously a consideration. We wouldn't want to incur any additional costs to send out a supplemental assessment levy. So the thought process here is that you want the assessments to go on the property tax bill, so that the treasurer's office has to submit a property tax receipt in order for collections to otherwise be validated. That's the whole enforcement.
Then why couldn't it be adjusted during the second year based on the formula that's figured out?
It absolutely could.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to make a friendly amendment to Mr. Norman Jackson's motion to that effect, that starting in the second year, a percentage will be calculated that is based on the value of the property, and an adjustment will be made to this first-year assessment, if he would accept
Mr.
that.
Jackson, would you accept that?
Yeah,
friendly
since Ms. Fenner's amendment is
Did
similar
y'all,
to
did
what
all
we-
my council members understand the adjustment in the friendly amendment? Okay, hearing none, thank you so much, Mr.
Yes,
Flynn.
ma'am.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Can I ask Mr. Brawley a question?
Mr. Brawley, will you come to the podium? Ms. Myers has a question.
Yes.
Just wanted to, for the sake of the folks in the tax district, just want to make sure that when we do this assessment, that any additional whatever fees will not be passed through to them, but this will just be, we will do whatever is required to do, and they will be paying just the fee. I'm nervous, we talked about this before, I'm a little bit nervous about an additional cost being passed through to this district for whatever is unique to this district.
But the only cost that will be passed through to the district will be the modification of the taxing system if we have to do that.
Can we put a cap on that?
No, ma'am, because each of these groups have paid their share, because all of the taxpayers of Richland County aren't benefiting from this
What's the
project.
largest that any group has been charged?
It could be as high as $10,000, I think, but it's probably not that high.
What's your best estimate of what it would be so that they can have a fair understanding of what they might be?
Probably around $6,500.
They don't seem to be shocked, so I'm fine with that. Thank you, sir.
And where I'm standing at, I'd like to at least reference Mr. Flynn, and I appreciate your motion, Mr. Malinowski, and I think the county attorney and several of us will have to get together if we try to do it on a percentage basis, because there may be some legal issues with doing that, but we have up until next year to deal with that.
Okay. All right. Hearing no further comments on that issue, all in favor of the motion as amended, signify by, I think I need to raise your hand. All in favor, signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, Manning, McBride.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Next item will be 13D, an ordinance.
Madam Chair, do we need to do a reconsideration on
You
that?
need to do a motion
I
to
move for
reconsider.
reconsideration.
Motion to properly moved in second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Oh, sorry.
Opposed? Nay.
Madam
Mo-
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just a point to clarify for the residents of Lake Dogwood, because I think there may be some confusion as to what, may I take a moment to just explain? So what that means is that the motion that just passed means that you will be taxed equally this year, but going forward, you'll be taxed based on the value of your property, and you who should not have been taxed at that rate will get a rebate from the prior tax. Okay?
Well, I'm sure they get with Mr. Flynn, and Mr. Flynn better be able to explain it to them. Thank you so very much. Next item will be, I believe, item 13D, an ordinance authorizing the deed to Empire Equities Capital, LTD for 1 Summit Parkway, which is the former Summit Parkway Library, also described as TMS 23,00307. You'll find that information on page 88 through 96.
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Properly moved in second. Any discussion? Mr. Malinowski.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In the Exhibit B item that is in our agenda, which on the amended agenda will be on page 95.
94, 95.
Yeah, the attorney could possibly tell me if this is something that's still binding, because in here it says that failure of the grantee to use the property as a public library, the title thereto shall immediately revert to and vest in the grantor. It says either reimburse, well, and then there can be reimbursement for expenditures on the property. But then on the terms, it says that they're 4 successive 10-year periods, and this thing was signed well within the 4 successive 10 years. So I'm wondering, is this something that the property is no longer a public library, so does it, according to this, it says it shall immediately revert to and vest in the grantor, the company that gave the property to begin with. That's in number 1, the use of the
Yes.
property. So I want to make sure before we do anything as far as selling and taking any money that we're not violating this particular covenant that's here.
That covenant is, as far as I know, Mr. Malinowski, is still binding as it relates to the use of the property. Excuse me just one second.
It's a 92. It's 95. 95.
Who sold this property? Who sold the property?
Okay, I'm trying to see now.
No, listen to me. We gave it to the library. So it's my understanding that the way that this initially worked was the county gave this property to the library, as this property to the library for use as a library. So it's no longer going to be used for that purpose. It would revert back to us as the grantor of that particular property, piece of property.
So is it our property now, there?
This, the way it was worded back prior to that, it says it was Richland County for the Richland County Library Board, hereinafter termed grantor. Both together is what it says.
Yeah, okay.
And so long as the property shall be used as a public library, it states again.
Mhm.
So it's not being used as a public library. In the beginning, it says about that it's being given by this company, American Newland Associates, a California general partnership. It doesn't say that if it's not used as a library, the county gets it. It says it reverts back to the grantor, which is this company.
No. The grantor was initially Richland County. We granted the property to the library for use as a library.
Okay, I don't read that here because it says that Richland County for the library board is the grantee. So if it's all one is a grantee, how do you separate one all of a sudden into a grantor and one to a grantee?
Mr. Malinowski, it's my understanding that we initially granted the property to the library for use as a library. And I'm not sure where you're
All right,
reading
we're not going
from.
to debate it any further, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it our property now, or is it the,
Yeah, it reverted back once
To
it was
us.
not to be used as a library. Then it's my understanding there was this transaction with Empire to sell the property to them once it reverted back to us.
so Richland County, wait a minute, let me understand. Is this our property now?
Yes,
So now we're selling it to
Empire,
Empire?
yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. I understand it now. Okay, is there no further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chip Jackson?
I think C was mentioned before, I want to make sure I'm clear. It's going to be used as a child development center, you said?
Madam Chair, Mr. Jackson, the answer is yes. If there's any changes to that, we'll let you know. There are some complications, but if those changes come, I'll immediately let you know on that. But yes.
Madam Chair.
You still have the floor, Mr. Jackson.
If there are any changes with this vote tonight, do we have any say in that then at that point, if we approve this tonight? It's sold, then there's some changes. Do we have any recourse? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just concerned.
What is the, what's the
The question is, if Empire for some reason isn't able to consummate the deal, does this action preclude council from getting it back?
What do you mean getting it back?
Or is the property assignable to someone else?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, Mr. Seals?
I'm going to propose this. Can we hold this, let us get the answers rather than looking like we're
Thank you, Mr. Seals.
dumbfounded?
You want to defer this item? You need a motion to defer this item?
I'm not sure what would be the appropriate motion, but
Okay, Mr. N. Jackson?
Yes, we're selling the property to this, entity,
right,
correct?
right.
Can we, impose, restrictions in selling the property if it's zoned, for certain things?
You can, but,
Possibility?
yes, but as I understand the question from Mr. Jackson, C. Jackson, he is raising the issue of assignability.
Yeah, I understand.
And I don't have the answer to that. And I think even in talking through that with the county attorney, there are so many variables involved. The better thing to do would be to get the answers and be clear and make sure that what we say is correct.
Okay, so,
Madam Chair, do I need to
Mr.
make
Chip Jackson, you have the floor.
I move to defer it then, Madam Chair.
Okay, proper moved and second to defer this item. Defers are non-debatable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This item will be deferred to when? The next meeting, Mr.?
Yes, I will get the answers this week.
Okay, that item will be deferred until the next council meeting. Item E, 13E, will be authorizing execution and delivery of fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes and incentive agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina and Trans USA Incorporated to provide for payment of fee in lieu of taxes, authorizing certain infrastructure credits and other related matters. Information you will find on page 97 through 130. Entertain a motion.
Move approve, Madam Chair.
Have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Second. Properly moved and second in the discussion. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm all in favor of this particular project and moving forward with it. It is third reading, and prior to this, I had requested that a lot of the blank information that appears on these pages toward the back here, 155, 163, these are items that I think we need to have filled in. I mentioned it last time, before we get to third reading. We're at third reading and have blanks. How can we possibly pass something? That's like giving somebody a blank check, signing it and saying, go ahead, do what you need to with it, but this is what I think you should do with it. So it's actually, with the new pages, it would be pages 156 and 164. On 156, you've got as many blanks as you do words. On 164, you also have many blanks in here. This is basic information that I think should have been put into here by the time it gets this far along in the process.
Come on with all the book plates and all those?
They don't do that until it's filed.
That's, I'll let Mr., I yield this to Mr. Smith. It seemed like these blanks,
Well, at least in terms of page 156, it's a property description.
right.
And some of the blanks have to do with, once this is recorded, they will put the book page
Right.
of the recordation. So
We can't
that
do
won't happen until later on,
We can't
as
do
it relates to that particular page.
That may be, but primarily, you're right, 156. We're leaving the company out, the state that they're in. We're just leaving an awful lot of information out that should be in there. Like I said, I support this, but I don't support sloppy work, which is what this looks like.
All right. That concludes your remarks, Mr.
Yes,
Lamont?
ma'am, thank you.
Okay, I did have a motion, and it was approved, for they cutting the lights, probably second. Okay, if there are no further discussion on this item, hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, McBride.
Opposed?
Myers. Manning.
Manning, okay. Kennedy? Okay, all right. All right. What was the count? I'm just asking her to vote.
2 opposed.
Okay. Did Ms. Kennedy oppose? Okay, she's in favor? All right, 2 opposed. All right, 9 agree. All right, thank you. Next item will be item 13F, authorizing execution and delivery of fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina and Tyson Prepared Food Incorporated to provide for payment for fee in lieu of taxes, the extension and of existing fee in lieu of tax agreement between Richland County and Project Flag and other related matters. The information you will find on page 131 through 164. Entertain a motion.
Approve, Madam Chair.
And I need a second, probably moved in second. Any discussion? Mr. Malinowski.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, this is the one that all my comments were for. It's tough going back and forth between amended agendas and my original, so that's all. Just for
Okay,
the
so
record,
you-
this is the one.
Are you okay now?
You go ahead, I'm still voting no, because we don't
Okay.
have everything in here. We
right,
can't get the
okay.
job done right, let's
If
not
there's
do it.
no further
Madam Chair, this
discussion-
was the one my no vote was for, too.
Okay, this is your no vote for first, so you want to go back and put your real vote in the right place?
No, ma'am, that's fine.
Okay, all right, hearing none. I mean, we need a little humor tonight. All in favor signify by saying, raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, Manning, McBride.
All opposed.
Opposed, Malinowski.
We got 1 opposed. All right, thank you. Next item will be, that concludes the 3rd reading items. Next item will be the report of the Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one item that was forwarded for full council consideration regarding providing additional office space for the public defender. The staff had identified 2 locations on Main Street. However, the committee felt that we did not have sufficient information to make a decision, and subsequent to us forwarding it to you without recommendation, Mr. Strickler, the public defender, did have an opportunity to visit both sites, and he sent out a report of his recommendations. Unfortunately, I was unable to open that on my computer. It was some sort of zip file. And I apologize, Mr. Strickler. I didn't get to it till this afternoon. Anyway, Madam Chair, the item is up for consideration by full council. I would ask, before council consider it, that we hear, I believe that staff was supposed to provide some additional information, and also Mr. Strickler did have a recommendation, I believe.
Okay, staff, are you prepared for this?
Madam Chair, we are not prepared to provide information that's different than what we provided. I think Mr. Strickler did take a hard look and is prepared to come to council and has provided that input to you.
Mr. Strickland, would you please come to the podium and give us an explanation, please?
Have additional hard copies of the report.
I'd like to see it, since I couldn't open it. Sorry about that. Well, if I hadn't waited until too late.
You can give them to the clerk and let the clerk pass them out, and you can start your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is all in the report, which I sent out Sunday. Visited both sites. The 1501 site's in the TD building on Main Street. It's in the basement of the building. It consists of one large rectangular room, plenty large enough, which is...
Whoa.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
This is what time we go to bed in District 8?
I can continue regardless of the lighting.
all right.
It's one large rectangular room, the basement of the building.
Mr. Strickland, can you tell me which location you're talking about?
This
now?
is the
Remember, those two different locations.
1501 Main Street location, which is the TD building on Main, right adjacent to the Art Museum. The location's in the basement of the building. It's one large rectangular room, completely large enough for our needs, which is occupied almost entirely by a central row of cubicles, approximately shoulder height. They're reflected in the pictures that attached to the report. In short, there's no privacy in the areas that would have to be used by the attorneys. And one thing which is completely critical is that attorneys have the ability to go ahead and speak with their clients regarding their matters in private. That's if you don't have privacy, then you have no claim of attorney-client privilege, and there is and anything that's said can be brought against your client. So that's a major drawback. I don't see any way other than a complete gutting of that space to convert it into office spaces. In short, there are no offices there. There are a couple rows of cubicles, which in addition to not being offices, have very little room in them to conduct interviews with your clients and or potential witnesses. They're perfectly acceptable for someone working the phone, doing whatever you need to do in a cubicle, but they're not equipped as offices would be. There is no waiting area associated with the space. I'm not saying that if you're going to gut the space, you couldn't turn part of it into a waiting area. I have no idea whether the company would be interested in doing that. Access is via an elevator. I assume there's some stairs, but our access was by elevator. So, in my opinion, both due to the lack of space for a waiting area, and we typically have anywhere from a few to 20, 25 people waiting to sit down and speak with their attorneys. They're currently waiting in the lobby of the courthouse, because we have no waiting area inside our office at this point. But there's no waiting area there. It's the space in the basement is accessed by a series of hallways. You weave through them to get to the area. So I found both for lack of waiting area and particularly for the lack of privacy as far as the rooms go, the fact there are no private offices, that space was inappropriate for the uses that we would have to put it to. The other space is at 1730 Main, which is catty corner across the street from the courthouse. It's adjacent to the Middle Eastern restaurant, which sits on the corner of Main and Laurel, across the street from the courthouse. It's a three-story building dates from about 1900, I think. And Ms. Pringle and I had actually looked at that second floor of that building 3 years ago as we were casting about trying to find office space, and it's got a lot of merit to it. It is, and this is all found in the memo, the three floors each contain a mix of offices, and by offices I mean what one commonly conceives of as offices, places with doors that close, that you have office furniture in, and desks and chairs, and the ability to go ahead and do your business there. The first, second, and third floor all have offices in them. Each of those floors has, in addition to offices, areas that have cubicles, which can be used by support staff. I believe the first floor had 5 cubicles. The second and third floor each had a couple of cubicles. And the first floor, off the top of my head, I want to say had about 9 offices in it, which were all acceptable for use as offices. Each floor had a couple of bathrooms in it, their access, and copy rooms in every floor. So I found that was appropriate for the uses, or use that we intended to put the space to. It would be sufficient, the first floor would be sufficient for us to shift a number of attorneys to and provide space for people that we need at this point in time. I did mention in the report that after going through it, it occurred to me, and I have no idea where the county stands on the judicial center, time frame, this, that, or the other needs in the judicial center. That's not my business. But as I go through it, or as I went through it, it occurred to me that another possibility would be to shift my entire first floor operation from the judicial center to 1730, rent all 3 floors. That would provide space for my office for not only the immediate needs, but any additional expansion in the future. And your council may remember that I have a 5-year plan in mind as far as that goes, and would free up a substantial amount of space on the first floor for any additional needs of the judicial center, other occupants of the judicial center. I don't know whether that's in play or not. So I just put that out there for consideration as long as I was looking at it. So bottom line is I'd recommend 1730 in some form as a place that we could occupy, and found that 1501 was not appropriate.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Manning, you recognize.
Mr. Trickler, on page 8 of 8 of what you've handed out and sent to us on Monday, in the 3rd paragraph down, it begins with leasing the whole building at
Yes, sir.
1730. The last sentence says that you know there will be additional costs associated with space, but there should still be funds sufficient for several years of occupancy.
Yes, sir.
Those, when you're making reference to those funds, are those funds in a line
My
item?
reference to funds is that this whole procedure began several years ago when County Council approved a $1 million bond specifically to address space issues. That was a couple years ago, I believe, Mr. Pierce. So I don't know what's happened to that money. That, too, is none of my business, okay? But there originally was $1 million to go ahead and take care of space issues for the Judicial Center.
Madam Chair, do I still have the floor?
You still have the floor, Mr. Manning.
I see we have some bonding attorneys here. Can we lease space with a bond?
We wouldn't recommend that, no.
Okay.
Point of clarification, please.
Point of clarification, Mr.
I
Pierce.
don't believe that was actually a bond. I think we appropriated funds up to $1 million. I'd have to ask somebody to clarify that, because I don't recall it being a bond.
Okay, well, let's ask somebody. Was that put in the budget at one point for $1 million for space expansion?
Mr. Manning, you still have the floor. I have a point of clarification. You all right with that?
Yeah, I'm good with a point of
Mr. Seth
clarification.
Rose?
Would it, I am familiar with the Public Defender's Office, and they do have a serious need. Would it be, I would make a motion to defer this item, ask staff to get some clarity on the bond issue, whether there was a bond or there was other funding. And that'd be my motion.
I have a motion to defer this item. It's properly
To our
moved in
next council,
second
to our next regular session
until
council.
the next regular session meeting. Mr. Manning, wait a minute. Huh? It's probably moved in second, but, Mr. Manning still had the floor.
Can Mr.
Wait,
Pierce have a clarification?
wait, Mr. Manning, you still have the floor. That was, I thought Mr. Rose wanted to have a point of clarification, but you still have the floor. And then I go back to your motion, Mr. Rose. Mr. Manning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My motion would be that we proceed with the rental of the property at 1730 Main Street.
I'd second that, Madam Chair.
Properly moved in second.
I guess,
Okay.
no,
Now,
yeah, that's fine.
That's motion.
okay, now I do have Mr. Rose,
Yeah,
properly moved in second.
I guess my thing, and I want to be clear, I support I just want to make sure the public defender's office gets what they need. We just heard about, we just heard about the need for a waiting area and some other things. And so I don't want to lease a building or rush into a lease of a building that we may not be able to retrofit into what the needs are. I want to know what funding's available. And so that's why I made the motion to defer to the next council meeting.
Okay, Mr. Rose is making a motion to defer. It was seconded by
Madam Chair?
Mr. Malinowski and Mr. Pierce. You recognize?
You promised me a point of clarification before they
Okay.
take it.
All right.
Since deferrals are non-debatable, could I have a point of clarification?
You may, Mr. Pierce.
All right. The other issue that we need to, if it's going to be deferred, if that motion carries, the other issue had to do with cost. We were supposed to get some figures potentially because one of the places had janitorial included, one didn't, and we needed to factor in the actual cost differential. So
Page
if the item
175.
is not carried, if it's deferred, I would ask that information be definitely included when we come back.
Can I add that as a friendly amendment to my motion? So not only to include the issue of whether or not there's a bond or some other funding that was approved by council previously in years past, but also for the information that Mr. Pierce just requested.
That was your motion. Do you want to include that in your motion to defer?
And since I'm the seconder of that
Yeah,
motion.
but I want to be clear that the motion is to bring it back at the next council meeting.
Right, I just
Would
like
you
to,
accept that? Would you accept?
I'll
that?
accept it and I'll point out page 174 has what
Okay,
Mr.
all
Pierce
right.
is asking for.
Okay, if no further discussion on this item, all in favor of the defer signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers.
Opposed?
Opposed, Manning.
And the motion is
Pierce,
to
McBride.
defer this until the next council meeting. Thank you. All right. Mr. Pierce, you still have the floor.
Madam Chair, that concludes the report of the A&F.
Thank you. Next item will be the report of the Economic Development Committee. That would be Mr. Paul Livingston.
Madam Chair, item 15A, a resolution approving the 2017 assessment roll for the Business Sand Hill Improvement District, Richland County. The committee recommendations for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of the committee's recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, that completes my report. 1 minute.
Oh, wow, I love you, Mr. Livingston. We rolling. Next item will be the rules, report of the Rules and Appointment Committee, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 16, I guess it's 16A. It was a notification of vacancies and appointments here. The Community Relations Council had 4 vacancies. It shows A. Donnell Peterson, but it was determined Donnell Peterson does not live in Richland County, therefore we've eliminated him. The second person making applications who was interviewed was Jeff Stallings, and the committee recommended to appoint Jeff Stallings to the Community Relations Council.
You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of the committee's recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Malinowski, you still
Thank
have
you, Madam Chair. The Employee Grievance Committee, 1 opening, 1 applicant, Mr. Roger Sears, who after being interviewed, the committee recommends to appoint Mr. Roger Sears.
You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of this committee's recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. We got 1 nay. Okay, that concludes your.
No, Madam Chair, now is the additional
the
one,
additional one, I'm
which
sorry.
was the Transportation Penny Oversight Committee, Advisory Committee. There are several vacancies. The first 2 are for 3-year appointments. Mr. Richard Brown and Ms. Jennifer Paolucci both applied. They were both interviewed, and the committee recommends to appoint both Richard Brown and Jennifer Paolucci to the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee for a 3-year term each.
You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of the committee's recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries to appoint those two.
And that completes my report.
Mr. Malinowski, do you know who those folks are replacing?
Yes, the clerk has those names.
Okay, all right. Okay, does that complete your report?
That completes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I hear from item 17, report of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, Mr. Jim Manning, Honorable Jim Manning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 17A, Farah-Pisgah Church Road Intersection Project. Negotiations have been finalized and have come to an agreement between the county and the South Carolina Department of Disability and Special Needs for the purchase of the property needed to construct the Farah-Pisgah Church Road Intersection Project. The purchase requires a resolution by council with 3 readings of public hearing. In addition, on the same project, to construct the project, SC&G is required to relocate their utility lines. Due to their having prior rights, the county is required to pay for this relocation outside the right-of-way. A portion of the property purchased from SCDDSN is proposed to be conveyed to SC&G by easement, requiring an ordinance by council. The committee unanimously approved forwarding to council the proposed resolution and ordinance to forward to full council for consideration. Based on that, the motion be to approve the proposed resolution concerning purchase of right-of-way from SCDDSN, which is needed to move forward with the intersection project. That's the first motion.
Okay, that's your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
You heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Malinowski?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just, for the record, would like this information. I'm going to support it, but I want to, for my own edification, know. It says we're paying $97,500 for this property. What was the original appraised value for that property?
Mr. Malinowski, members of the council, my name is Mitch Willoughby, one of the attorneys for this condemnation matter. The original amount that was appraised value was $48,000. Now, keep in mind that appraisal was for initially about 0.87 acres of land that we would take in fee and about 0.32 acres that we would take by permanent easement. And as we go through the negotiations, one of the major concerns of the Department of Disabilities, they operate the Midland Center out there, and they have for many, many years. So they have vulnerable clients, and so they were very concerned about there being a buffer between the roadway and their property. So as we went through the negotiations, there was money placed into the negotiations for landscaping if they chose to use it in that fashion. And then when part of the negotiations, they wanted us to buy the entire 1.19 acres in fee. And the reason for that is they said, look, if you take a permanent easement, we'll have the liability, but we really won't have the use of that right-of-way. So we'd rather be completely devoid of the property. And so as we go through all those negotiations, that is the reason for the price.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Willoughby. And for the record also, this is a state agency, is that correct? The South Carolina Department of Disabilities and Special Needs?
They are a state agency, and in fact, it's also the Department of Administration. So the Department of Administration recently is the custodian of title for all state property. So when we got into the condemnation, it was basically both of those entities that will be conveying title to Richland County.
Right, so, and ultimately, we're giving this property to South Carolina Department of Transportation, so we're paying the state only to give property back to the state, correct?
Well, ultimately, we will convey it back over
Right.
to
to
SCDOT, and they'll have future responsibilities to maintain it and those things. And I would say, for the record as well, that we literally, through these negotiations, went to the Department of SCDOT to ensure that they were on board. There were conversations between the SCDOT director and the director of the Department of Disabilities, and they were instrumental in bringing about this settlement.
If there are no further discussion, you all heard the recommendation of the committee. All in favor of the recommendation of the committee signify by,
Just one
Yes,
item.
sir.
Madam Chair, I think that there are probably a few scrivener's errors and typos in there. So if you're going to approve it, just make it subject to our correcting those. That's all. Just my.
Okay, y'all heard it, Mr. Manning?
Yes, ma'am, I heard that.
Okay, so all in favor with that, those amendments signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, McBride.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Manning, you still?
Madam Chair, the second piece of that, the motion be to approve the ordinance conveying an easement to SC&G for utility relocations, which is needed to complete the project.
And the committee's recommendation was? Approve it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, y'all heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of the committee's recommendation signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, McBride.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Manning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 17B, Bluff Road widening, Phase 1. In the survey and design of the Bluff Road Phase 1 project, a discrepancy was discovered between Track 5 and the county-owned right-of-way along Rosewood Drive. The property owner has requested that the county quitclaim this property, and the county staff concurs, as it does not have any foreseeable impacts to the county or operations of the roadways, sidewalks, or utilities. As a result, the committee unanimously approved forwarding this to full council to quitclaim the property in question, and thus the motion is to approve the quitclaim of property in dispute on the Bluff Road Phase 1 project.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, N. Jackson, Malinowski, Dickerson, Livingston, Kennedy, Myers, McBride.
Any opposed? Likewise. Motion carries. Mrs. Manning, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 17C, program status update. Monthly progress is produced each month and provides a status of where projects in development currently stand. Reports available online. In addition, this report provided to the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee with each monthly meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee. Staff is available to answer any questions. The committee approved that the program development, PDT, providing bi-monthly updates to council beginning in October 2017, not to exceed 10 minutes. As a result of that, I'd like to invite Mr. David Beatty to the podium to give an update on the Penny program. And please note that you've got this report copy for August on your table. Mr. Beatty.
Is this a report that was handed out to us this afternoon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Mr. Beatty's gonna give us a report. You've asked him to give us a 10-minute report on this?
Yes, ma'am. That was part of the committee recommendation that came at last month's meeting.
It's been a question.
Recommendation to approve that?
Is there a recommendation to approve it? The 10-minute presentation? The committee's recommendation is, wait, Mr. Beatty, don't go anywhere. We'll sort this out. The committee's recommendation is to have you have the report and then allow you to give a 10-minute presentation, up to 10 minutes, on this report. And is that the pleasure of this council based on the recommendation that came out of committee? So I have to take a vote on this to make sure that this is correct. Is that correct? I have a question. I have Mr. N. Jackson.
Okay, we're getting a report, right?
Right.
Let's talk about that here, right? We're gonna have Mr. Beatty present the report that we have to us. I mean, I'm just trying to explain why give us a report and have somebody explain the report to us.
Okay, this is, let me look at this in the context of which is met. It says the program status update. So evidently this was discussed in the committee, and the committee recommended that we have a program update and that you were gonna give us, and they recommend, the committee is recommending that we allow Mr. Beatty up to 10 minutes to give his report. Does everybody understand that? We need to vote on it. So all in favor of this, because this come out of the committee. Mr. Okay, Mr. Rose, you
Madam Chair,
recognize?
I'd move that we approve the committee's recommendation.
You hear a second? Second. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Rose, C. Jackson, Dickerson, Livingston, Myers, Manning, McBride.
Any opposed?
Opposed, N. Jackson, Malinowski.
Mr. David Beatty, you are allowed to give a report up to 10 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chairwoman Dickerson. I'm David Beatty with the Program Development Team, and if it pleases the Chair, I'll be less than 10 minutes. What we've distributed is a monthly progress report. We prepare this report, obviously monthly. We typically take about a week to a week and a half after the close of the last month to update the report. So since September just ended, we're working on preparing that report. That report will be made available online. I distribute it at the Transportation Ad Hoc Committees, and I'll be glad to distribute it at Council, the most recent one, whenever I present it as well. So tonight, I just want to give you a very brief overview of what is in the report. We're reporting a little bit over 40 active projects. We do not report on projects that have been completed, but we report on 40 active projects. The beginning of the report is a brief overview of the program. It's a very high-level overview. We also provide a very high-level overview of the finances. We show the revenue that's come in and the expenses to date. Then we get into the actual project sheets where we have a brief description of the project, the schedule, and then the budgets for the different components of the cost of the project. Now, these budgets are updated quarterly, so we just completed Q3, so we'll be updating those budgets and we'll include moving forward. So then we've got about 40 pages of project information. Then we also show towards the back of the report on page 50, we have a summary of all of the projects that have been completed to date, paid for by the penny. So we show the projects complete and the amount that was funded on each individual project. And then we go on to report, in closing, a summary of all of the construction contracts that have been procured to date. So that shows all of the construction contracts from the life of the penny, and through this reporting period was $152 million in actual construction contracts. So this monthly report is provided. I'll continue to provide it. And moving forward, what I would recommend, if it pleases the chair and council, my report would certainly be less than 10 minutes. And instead of going through this individual report again, what I would propose to do is touch on the highlights of design, procurement, right-of-way acquisition, and construction, and then open it up to questions and answers. So I won't go through the report again, but I'll hit the high levels of the different components of the program. So with that, I'll close my presentation and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Okay, Ms. Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Just two questions. For future reference, it would be helpful where you have the projects listed to have the referendum amount that was approved for the project as the starting number, so that when we have the amounts here, we know where we are based on the referendum. And it would, if the chair is amenable to it, it would be helpful to me, once you're done with it, if you just email it to council so that we have it, you know, when it's done.
That's easy to do. So it should be about a week to a week and a half after the close of the previous month. We can email that out in a PDF to all of council.
Okay.
And a hard copy, yes, sir.
I might need it. Okay. Ms. Myers, does that complete your remarks? Mr. C. Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. One, I think I heard you say, Mr. Beatty, that you will in the future provide any reports like this that you give to the committee to the council at the same time?
But what I'll do is I'll give the most recent report to the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee.
Right.
And then whenever I present to council, I'll present again that most recent report.
But you will give the document to us at the time you give it to the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee?
Oh, absolutely, yes, sir.
Second, would it be possible for any projects that close during that period of reporting that you would be able to show us the initial projected cost and the final cost for those projects?
I believe we can do that, yes, sir.
That would be helpful. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. Any further question? Mr. Malinowski? I'm sorry, Mr. Manning? Okay, Ms. Myers for clarification?
You said you were going to provide the monthly report, not just when you're coming to council, right?
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, and would that also go through our administrator?
Absolutely.
All right, okay. Mr. Manning, you recognize?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Beatty, you've indicated that this is online, and this is the August 2017. Would the July 2017 still be online, or when you put this one on, it goes away?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Manning. It allows me to clarify. We keep all of our monthly reports online, and I believe we go back to March of 2015. And so you can go to richlandpenny.com and find all of our reports from March of 15, I believe is the first one, but they're all online, yes, sir.
And one other thing, Mr. Beatty, I don't know if you've done this since we have a couple council members that have come on. I know at least since when Jennifer Monsey offered for all of us to sit down and download the app and on a phone and on iPad, laptop. Has that been offered? And if not, could we offer that?
Absolutely. What the program development team offers, we have a computer program basically that tracks and reports all of the project, and we call it TEAMS. It's an acronym. And what we can do is we can provide training, and we've provided it in the past, but we have not provided it recently. But we can provide training to council and staff about how you can access this information remotely. So you can do it from your phone, your home laptop, whatever it may be. So I will go through the appropriate channels and offer any additional opportunities for training for
Thank you
council
very
and
much.
staff.
If there's nothing else from my colleagues, that would...
I have Ms. Kennedy.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask him for a hard copy.
To be mailed
Yes,
to her,
ma'am.
to be mailed to her house.
Yes.
And make her sign for it, okay? But I do have one question. I wanna follow up with Ms. Myers. I wanna know say for instance, you know my heartbeat. I'm gonna look, first thing, my eyes go to Broad River Road. Can you tell me the referendum amount for that versus what it was?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm looking at, I can pick out all of them. I've been picking these for the past 3 or 4 days, so I'd like to know, I'd like to be like Ms. Myers. I'd like to know the referendum amount versus how much this actual costs. Either
Okay.
up, above, or under.
Okay, we
Over
can do
budget,
that.
under budget, on time.
Okay, we can add that, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, Miss McBride, you're here. I'm bothered you.
I actually was at Park Lane.
Okay.
I went to another place for the meeting. The referendum amount, following up with Ms. Dickerson and Ms. Myers, and the actual amount, it would be helpful for me if there was a justification for it. That way I could better understand why there's if there's a difference, why there is a difference.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. N. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is if there's a referendum amount, that amount should go to the entire project. So if they can add additional amount to the referendum amount, unless it comes back to council and we make that decision. So everyone is asking for the original amount, the projected amount, and the final amount. My understanding is that based on the referendum, if we have X amount that's the amount we have to use. We can't go over it. Because if we go over it, we're taking from other projects. And at the end of the day, if that continues, we will be short to do other projects. And only council can make that decision. I don't even think council can make that decision. Because in the referendum, we went to the citizens and we told them how much each project would cost, and there's up to 10 to 15% overrun on those projects. And certain things was built in for projected future amount. So I'm hearing what was the original, the projected, and the final amount, and I hope there's nothing over the original amount, because that's not supposed to happen. I just have concern if there's additional cost to the original amount, we're going to have a serious problem, and we will be short of funds, and that may cause some problems down the road to build other projects. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Chip Jackson, you recognize.
Thank you. The referendum amount back in 2012, based upon whatever the determinations were at that time, versus the project projected amount that was bidded out last year, could be different for some very significant and legitimate reasons, because of simply the changes in costs for doing those jobs, the availability of those vendors, et cetera. The final amount is based upon how much the job actually costs. So I didn't ask for what the referendum dollar amount was 5-6 years ago. I asked you to share with me what the projects were projected to be bidded for and what they were completed for. And so that may be higher, but it may be lower. It may be the exact amount. And so I would not want us to exclude my request, because we're fearful that there may have been a change from what it ended up being projected versus what was on the referendum 5.5 years ago. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I'm gonna jump in on this real quick before I acknowledge Mr. N. Jackson. I truly agree with you, Mr. C. Jackson. However, if those changes are to be, then that report is supposed to come to us. We need to know it prior to anybody doing it above and beyond. I understand that the prices may fluctuate, but the idea, if that is to happen, it is not to the team to do that. They're supposed to come back and bring us that report and let us know it up front. Mr.
Point of
N.
clarification, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
sir? Mhm.
There is a variance within that amount that I'm assuming, I wasn't on your council at the time, but I'm assuming there was a variance in the amount that was projected, or even in the referendum, that would allow them to go above that amount without having to come back before this council. I'm assuming that. Mr. Beatty, was that not the case?
I'm not certain,
I'm not
to
certain.
be quite honest.
So we'd have to hit it on the mark exactly, is what you're suggesting?
No.
No,
So there would have been a variance. It's either yes or no.
Mr. Smith should be able to answer that. You know, I always tell you, I don't give anybody at least two things I don't do: financial advice, because I don't have a SEC clearance, and legal advice, so I don't have a juice. So I need that to be from somebody who can actually answer that question. Why Mr. Smith is pondering that question, Mr. N. Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not trying to exclude anything or prevent anyone from getting any information. When you do an estimate, a projected estimate for a project, we paid over $600,000 for this estimate from Parson and Birkenhoff. $600,000. They have built in up to probably a 4 or 5 year projection of how much a project would cost if it's built. By the time it goes, they consider the time it takes to go through and the years to start. So that was built in. And up to 15%, my understanding is 10 to 15% was built into that projection. So therefore, for example, something may cost $1 million, they add, well, in 5 years, maybe $1.15 million. So it could go up to $1.15 million. So it was built in. What I'm saying is in the dollar amount, the total dollar amount that the PDT has, not the people who are bidding, but the PD for that project, they should make sure any bids comes in under or at or under that amount, not over that amount. Because if anything goes over that amount of money, we will be short. And we're going to have a problem down the road. My concern is for the citizens, the taxpayers, the areas that haven't got their projects built yet. I'm seeing the City of Columbia, USC, all those projects almost done or in progress. In the unincorporated area, nothing has started yet. And I'm fearful that we start a project and we start overspending, and when it's time for other areas, we say, oh, the money is done, so we can't do anymore, and that's it. So my concern is about the citizens, and my concern, I want everyone to get all the numbers you ask. I'm not trying to exclude anything. I want all the information I can have so I can make a decision on how to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Okay, I have Ms. Kennedy.
I just want them to remember my hard copy.
Okay, they're gonna make
Yes,
sure you
ma'am.
get a hard copy.
Thank you.
And so now, Mrs. Smith, I will yield to you to find out whether or not you have found out
Okay.
that information for the council, so we can make an informed decision.
Yeah. Madam Chair, it's my understanding that there were no hard numbers in the referendum itself. However, if you recall, last week, I think it was, there was an ordinance that we gave each one of you a copy of, and attached to that ordinance, however, were numbers, and those numbers had attached to it specific projects that went with the numbers. So I think that in terms of what Mr. Jackson has said, there are,
C.
I'm sorry, in Jackson, I'm sorry.
Are you saying C. Jackson? or
No,
N?
in Jackson.
In Jackson, okay.
What he had said, I think he's referring to the numbers that are actually in the ordinance and attached to the ordinance that was passed as it relates to the actual numbers. And I think earlier, I think the administrator made a recommendation that he thought that we needed to have a work session because, as you recall, there are several questions that have come up about changing projects, eliminating projects, what we can and can't do. Those were things that we told you that we were in the process of trying to research and trying to come back with an answer to council about what you can and cannot do. And a lot of the things that you're talking about now, I think, are issues that will probably be a part of a discussion that we think, as part of his recommendation, would be appropriate for the work session in terms of what is actually happening with the projects and whether or not we're having overruns in terms of cost, whether or not those costs were already projected in the Parsons-Brinckerhoff study or not. Those are things that I think that were intended to be presented to you as part of the work session.
Madam Chair?
Mr. C. Jackson?
I would hope that no one on this council would want to be doing this project at the expense of the taxpayers or to deny anyone, any community, their fair share and opportunity, which has been identified on the referendum some many years ago. And I don't want to assume that simply because there's an overrun on one project, that there may not be an underrun on another project. And so that the bottom line in terms of the amount of dollars being spent still hasn't changed. So I don't make that assertion at all that you're gonna, because you overrun the project, you're gonna overrun the entire penny program. That's nonsensical. The challenge would be then for the future projects to ensure that you have underruns so that you balance out your bottom line. Because we're really only concerned about the bottom line. There's a finite amount of money at the end of the day. And as long as we reach that bottom line with the number of projects, it doesn't matter whether you overrun on 2 and underrun on 2, as long as you get them all done with the amount of money that you have in your budget and that you projected you're going to get done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I totally agree, and I think that's why the workshop might be able to help us, so we can say if we got Bluff Road is $1 million, but Broad River Road is 50, so I mean, you could be very well right with the balancing act. So I think the work section right now is crucial for us to get that information as quickly as possible so that we can make sure you're on the right track, Mr. Bailey.
And just for clarification, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. N.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm not assuming in the underrun. I hear talk of overrun. I haven't heard anything of underrun. And in my experience in transportation, and I've done transportation for 37 years, right? I've never heard of any underrun. But I'm not assuming anything. I just want to make sure that some citizens are not left out. That's why I'm asking these questions. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm not talking about overrun, underrun. I'm talking about overrun. I would hope there are some underrun projects that can balance it out. But so far, I'm not seeing any or hearing of any. Only thing I'm hearing of is overrun. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we got the information, and Mr. Manning, I think Mr. Manning's thing was just to give us an update, and that's what we are here for, so we've had the update. I don't think it was no vote unnecessarily. We voted to let you give us an update. You have given us an update, and I think all hearts and minds will be clear through a workshop, and we want to thank you for being there to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item will be citizen input with items pertaining, must pertain to Richland County matters not on the agenda. Mr. Malinowski, did anyone sign up to speak?
25 people.
Oh, wow.
No one signed up to speak, Madam Chair.
Okay. That public hearing is, that public hearing, citizen input is now closed. Next item will be item for executive session. Mr. Smith?
Madam Chair, we have item 6A, potential litigation, and item 6B. Those are two contractual matters that have to do with the sale of property.
Okay. We need to go into executive session?
Yes, ma'am.
I need a motion to go into, we are now, Daniel had a second? Probably moved in second. All in favor of going into executive session, signify by saying aye. We are now in executive session. Thank you. We're gonna be in here. I think we're gonna stay in this room.
It's right there.
Oh, it just has to do with Rice Motley has to ask us whether or not they could represent us on